Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrea Perego. I will be chairing this session. It is the second session on linked open data for Inspire. Actually, we also had the other session before lunch. Many of you were already present. And as I said, wrapping up the last session, I would very much like to have 5 minutes with you after the presentation, just to discuss whether you may think any coordination in the work many people are doing on using the data in Inspire can be beneficial, and how we can facilitate this work. So let's start with the first presentation. So I invite my colleague Robin Smith.
Thanks, Andrea.
Find it?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Here is it, F5.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. A couple of confessions to begin. I'm not a data modeler. I'm not an RDF expert. I'm just coordinating the ARENA project, and I thought it would be a very good idea to present this part of the work to the Inspire audience. So I'll try and give the presentation as best I can, which is also work by other people who are certainly more capable than me in terms of this. And I'll also ask Andrea to add any comments in case I mislead you, say something wrong, or just generally give the wrong impression of what we've been doing. So many people involved, but I'll give you a quick overview, basically the background to the work, why we thought it was worth doing, explain more about it. Be brief about the work on the governance of persistent identifiers. I think one of the messages here is that we've managed to set the framework for some of this discussion to take place, but we haven't arrived at any concrete conclusions. Give you a little more on the resource description framework and the vocabularies for Inspire work that was taking place, and to say a little bit more about how Michael Lutz, Andrea and I see some of the next steps for this work in terms of the wider work of the MIG and the MIF, and particularly this work package 4 that this work has been contributing to. So ARENA is part of the ISA program, and we have been working with several experts in this particular task. So most of the work was...
Sorry to interrupt. Explain what the MIG and the MIF are.
Okay, so the MIG is Maintenance and Implementation Group, and the MIF is the Maintenance and Implementation Framework. And these are essentially the new structures that have been set up in Inspire to try and deal with some implementation issues. Thanks, Andrea. So essentially the work was led by Deloitte with support from KU Leuven, and then we had 3 experts involved in doing some of the experiments around drafting a RDF vocabulary. So around in the title of what we're doing here, ARENA focuses around reusable tools for Inspire implementation. That's kind of the core task. But we're interested in implementations that happen between Inspire and other sectors. So I describe this as building bridges. And I really like the photograph in terms of the metaphor it presents here. But the notion is we're starting with Inspire and we're trying to build out the way. And we think there's potential demands for Inspire-like data in this wider interoperability context of the ISA program, but also just generally speaking cross-border e-government that it supports. So what we asked our experts to help us with specifically was to gather evidence about the current status of work on persistent identifiers and RDF across Europe in particular, but also a couple of examples from other countries outside Europe. Try to look at a way to come towards a common agreed methodology and guidelines towards RDF encodings for Inspire, mainly focusing around the data. There's also discussions, maybe you heard this morning in the registry work, around RDF coming from the Inspire registry, etc. That's not a discussion I'll go into here, but it's to note there are several components of Inspire that could involve RDF. Of course, Andrea has also been doing work on metadata. And to come to some recommendations for how location persistent identifiers could be governed, and other related activities to that, not just Inspire. There was work on URI task force within the European Commission doing something similar, and the work was following this. Now, hasten to add, most of this work was taking place over a 5-month period, and it's essentially trying to set up the framework and material for further exploration. One of the reasons we did this wasn't just out the blue. What we'd seen is that several projects and countries had already started to try and create examples of Inspire data in RDF, and there may be some I can't find the right word for this, so apologies. I would say it's some simple ways of just trying to take models and just process them immediately into RDF without the considerations for how these can be set up. It's kind of like you would put information into an algorithm and you would get something out, as long as the algorithm was sound. The notion here is more finesse is needed to really make INSPIRE data properly represented in RDF, and I'll come on to some points that maybe raise some questions about how much that can happen. Now, the other thing that you probably would like to see, because I'm, again, not the expert, is we, through the process, ran a series of webinars, and a lot of the material is available on the JoinUp site, so you can come to this presentation afterwards and have a look at that, and hopefully eventually we'll be able to put up the videos as well. So a lot of the detailed technical explanation of what was happening in this work is available from these links. Now, I'm only going to use this slide to briefly talk about the persistent identifiers work, but this is the starting point. We asked the contractors to look into potential steps and stages that people would need to go through in governing their persistent identifiers, and they noted that a more holistic view is needed on the topic. They did a literature review, they interviewed several experts across Europe to discuss particularly the management of URIs, HTTP URIs, but not only. There's a number of ways in which, for example, spatial objects can be identified, and how do we manage that across Europe? Or across INSPIRE. That's the inspiration of this particular activity. But essentially, although a lot of the advice might come in the quadrant here to do with governance, and a lot of the current literature and discussion seems to focus on architecture, we shouldn't forget about the other two areas, and particularly financing cost models. These are necessary parts of a business to understand what it means to really go about managing persistent identifiers. The other I would bring you to your attention is registration, and of course we have some related experience in the development of the registry software and support to the INSPIRE registry. So there's some general activity that we're doing in ARENA and a lot of the work at the JRC that also applies to this. But of course the question is, how do we fit together a lot of these governance activities at a European level? So they have a list of primary recommendations in this framework for your consideration, and I'll come on to the end of my presentation to explain how you can find out more about that. Okay, this is where I start to get into deep water and may say something silly, but at least I'll try and explain what the work was involved here. So through the literature review, and particularly work at Genuchten and Linda's work in particular, there was a number of elements that were picked up on, questions that were posed in trying to say, how do we take the UML, GML modelling approach, mainly GML modelling approach of INSPIRE, and represent this in the ontology world of OWL, and of course RDF being related to that too. So one of the things that we should all take away from my presentation is that the UML modelling approach tends to be a closed world approach. If it's not in the model, it probably doesn't exist. It would be an error to include it. Whereas maybe in more the linked open data world, you don't know everything about all the data that could be out there, and therefore you're connecting things together in I would say, a more organic way, and you probably have a more defined term for it. But please just bear this one in mind, because it seems to be one of the more important things, and I understood this came also out of the discussion from the London Linking Geospatial workshop that W3C and OGC had organised. So this is probably quite an important thing for us all to consider. And then there's some issues around mapping concepts in UML and how those could be related to existing vocabularies. And again, the discussion about thesauri that Monica and others presented just before lunch in the registry session is very relevant here. We shouldn't be, I understand, creating new vocabularies if there's perfectly good ones out there. So how do we deal with that issue? UML has some particular restrictions, such as cardinality. So there's a certain, I guess, things like names. They can only, normally somebody only has two parents, and these kind of issues that are represented in the modelling approach of UML that aren't necessarily easy to pick up in RDF. And then one of the first things Andrea was explaining to me in this world is that the representation of geometry in RDF needs quite a bit of discussion, and so does temporal reference systems, and what standards get applied in this context. So you can see there's a number of really big questions that set the context of what could be done here to take INSPIRE data and make it available, particularly for e-government purposes, to reuse and link into our data. Just a couple of other ones to mention. How do you deal with versioning and lifecycle information in OWL? So the management of spatial objects in particularly mapping agencies, for example, is probably quite a well-defined process, but RDF maybe doesn't deal with that in the same way. And something particularly in the context of Inspire, how could you deal with the concept of voidability? Because it's a closed world, therefore you can have voidability in the UML side, but in the RDF side that doesn't make sense because you already are saying there are other things out there in my model that I don't know about yet and would include later. So voidability doesn't really work. So the process that we did, we had invited 3 experts who'd already started this kind of work to draft their methodologies. They met in a one-day workshop and started to compare and discuss this activity. I suspect a couple of them might be here today. They applied the methodology to a couple of annex themes that I'll show you in a second, and then tried to go about describing potential tools that could be involved to generate RDF vocabularies for Inspire, and to outline, I think this is the important point, what would be the open issues and obstacles for a proposed methodology. So the themes covered consistently were environmental monitoring facilities, but each expert had a couple of themes that they were describing: land cover transport, building statistics, area management, etc., zones and hydrography. So there's quite a broad view already in this testing process, trying to look and explore and compare approaches. There is a particular web ontology language, OWL, as I mentioned before, that has some rules that are being developed. And essentially, although this is the kind of starting point, there's a couple of elements here that we maybe would have injected into the process if we had our results earlier. So we have to be aware of this standard going through. But one of the things that's important here is that the activity that maybe reflects quite a strong approach based on UML, the standard approach for Inspire, is not really common practice in the linked data world. We do have 2 worlds, that, for now at least, mainly the geospatial way of looking at managing information and mainly the semantic web way. So other standards are involved. You can come back to this. Andrea's kindly highlighted I need to move on quickly. This is part of the point. There's another slide that maybe makes this clearer. So in our world, geomodels tend to mix information about real-world objects, the things that are out there that we're trying to map, with some metadata about it, like the versioning of a spatial object maybe is included in the data set, whereas this wouldn't necessarily be the case when it came to the linked open data world. And the classic example that most of you probably know, and I'll move on quickly, is the Manchester Piccadilly Station example that UK people have been showing probably in a number of presentations. The funny thing for me, just as being a researcher who's been a GIS analyst, is that one's a very strong database view, and I understand it quite happily, and the other one's new to me, and that might be true for several of you as well. So the fact that a map is an abstraction of reality, is a representation, I'm quite happy with. But in the linked data world, you have to deal with that in other ways. There is a real world thing, and there's a representation of it. Now, this is probably one of the best outputs, or most interesting outputs of the work, is a way in which you represent a spatial object then. So the blue node on the left-hand side is representing the real-world thing with a series of properties, and you can basically recognize at the top there that some of the geometry is involved. But essentially, the box around the whole thing is how the data is modeled. The spatial object becomes all of this, is what I understood. And Andrea can tell me if I've said something silly. But the point is, it's a different way of looking at the representation of spatial information, and there's some good news coming in a couple of seconds. I'll quickly skip through this, that there are some conversion rules that need to be taken in mind, and I mentioned a couple of them before, including external vocabularies and voidability. And here's the conclusions. So for both the work on PIDs, but specifically the work on RDF, we think we've had a very good start in exploring a common way of dealing with this, but we're not there yet. And what we'd really be interested in is looking at some further developments and testing in order to really arrive at common approaches. Again, RDF vocabularies that strongly show roots in UML don't really reflect the common practice of the semantic web. So we still have 2 communities that need to come together and look at this work. When RDF vocabulary is generated automatically, there's a need really to look at reviewing it and looking at editing it in its specific context. There's lots of maybe extra pieces because of the complexity of the UML that aren't maybe necessary in RDF. There's also a need to look at how we would commonly use external vocabularies, and particularly, obviously, this geometry issue that I mentioned before. But that starts to introduce issues about depending on other communities to define these things and manage them. I said as well, what we'd be interested in is some testing, and it'd be interesting to know what other kind of guidance is available. One of the things just at the end here is, if we're not going to use all the UML that's contained in Inspire, maybe that offers some greater freedom in being able to release up the data. So something to be discussed. Underline that last point twice. So last slide. What's the next steps? Well, the two pieces of work are finalised in 2 reports, and those reports are going to be submitted to the Maintenance and Implementation Group, the MIG, for discussion, and they should be published just after the summer. So our job was to really get through a process very quickly without testing, but to have some groundwork done and make this groundwork available to you soon as possible is our next objective. We're very interested in the context of the MIG and ARENA about the further testing. We essentially have methodologies, ideas, approaches for some annex themes. This needs further testing, and we think the best way to do that is community-based testing. So please talk to myself, talk to Andrea, talk to people in the MIG about who could be involved in taking this further, especially if there are any ongoing projects that could actually put this into practice as well. We'd be interested to have the methodology picked up and refined further. We'd also be interested in a specific example that would allow us to, for a very simple case at least, go through the whole process of producing inspired data. This is part of the work of the ARENA platform, and then have this value-added extra approach that deals with RDF. Now, what comes out of that as well are what other tools could be used for RDF conversion, because we're aware of some through the study. We'd like you to tell us about them. And as you may have seen, and I probably gave to some of you, we have a little leaflet on the JRC stand that asks you what tools are you using for Inspire implementation, and one of them is other. So if you'd like to know more, and if you'd like to follow what we're doing, please fill in that form, leave it at the JRC stand, and we'll get back to you later. That's it from me. Special thanks to everybody involved, especially Diedrich, Danny at KU11, Alice at Deloitte, Clemens, Stuart and Linda, who are our experts in helping to draft the first version. Again, not my work, but a special applause for them.
Thanks a lot, Robin. Are there any questions?
Did I get anything wrong?
No.
Good.
No.
Sorry, I've got to say something. Phil Archer, W3C. This thing about RDF being based on the open world assumption is true, and we stand by it because it's the way to model the world, because even I don't know everything. However, some people seem to want to close the world, and we have a working group, almost certainly starting very soon, which will offer a means by which you can offer a world closure system if that's what you need. In other words, we're developing a standard where you can specify that this particular RDF class must have these properties, and the values of these properties must come from this, that, and the other, from which you could make the heretical assertion, heretical in the RDF world, that if you don't know it's A and you don't know it's B, then you can assume it's C. It's horrible, we hate it, but we've got to do it.
Thank you, Phil. Any other questions, comments? Okay, probably I can just add one thing, because it's also the scope of this work. It is done inside of the framework of the ISA program, which is meant to support cross-sector interoperability. So one of the things that were also discussed in this work is how to reuse, or to make reusable RDF vocabularies out from Inspire. So, and the point made by Robin about we can keep out some of what is in UML when you transform the data is one of the issues, to consider the possibility of giving access to the data models in Inspire as RDF vocabularies with the level of complexity which is the right one, depending on the use that may be done in other cases. We had already done some work, preliminary work on this for the ISA core location vocabulary, and this is also one of the other points of the using these technologies.
Just one other thing. I have some leaflets about the work. So, sorry, I have some leaflets about the whole work of ARENA. So, if anybody's interested after the session, I can hand out some leaflets.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay, we can move to the second presentation. Please, Maria.
Thank you. So good afternoon. What I bring to share with you is about the experience of the Portuguese entity that is responsible for coordinating the Inspire implementation in our country, that is the institution where I came from, Director General for Territorial Development, that has attributions in terms of we are data providers, and we are also the cadastre national entity, and we recently inherited also the attributions related to planning, land use planning, and risk management. So obviously that to share data and to be aware of the usefulness of all the work that we are doing in terms of data production is obviously quite relevant for us, and monitoring Inspire implementation among all the public authorities is obviously really very relevant for us to understand difficulties, to understand in which extent the directive is really helping good governance. That is the subject of the conference that joined us here today. The example that I bring with me to share with you is the open link data in Portugal, a contribution for Inspire implementation, but I support my presentation on some of the work that we are doing related with the Smart Open Data European supported project that is about open link data for environmental protection in smart regions. We are, within this project, responsible for making a pilot, obviously, that relates with our attributions, but also relates with Inspire implementation. And that's the experience that I brought to share with you. Within, Smart Open Data main goal is to create a linked open data infrastructure supported by public, freely available data resources and data that are useful to deal with environmental protection, innovation, including innovation in the approaches in rural and European protected areas, including, obviously, national parks. Just to align what in our minds is when we think about open data, some of the most relevant principles that we have in mind are synthesized here. We have to be aware that data are complete, that data must be primary, that data must be timely, must be accessible, processable. Processable, that means that you can easily include them in your information system to solve governance problems, because all we have in mind, I'm representing a public institution, is obviously Inspire is a way to a goal, not a goal in itself. So obviously to serve governance institutions to better do their attributions, and also having in mind helping the Commission to solve the monitoring, namely the monitoring funds application in most different areas. That is quite a difficult and complicated task to address. And then also to assure that data have some permanence and are updated, and they are one of the most difficult things, addressing properly usage costs. For good governance, it's essential to know data quality and to know that the data are reliable over time, so that if you want to update your workflows with the same data, you are able to do so. And so that you have somehow automatic ways of guaranteeing that your data are being updated. Among the benefits of linked open data, we select some that we put here: to discover new data of interest while consuming other information, and to access the data schema in order to understand data inside, to make the data discoverable, of course, and accessible, and this is somehow the conditions to increase the value of the data, increase sharing, and so reducing, obviously, the costs, mainly the costs for good governance and for time consuming when dealing with complicated process that the public administration has in mind and has to deal with every day. The risk, the costs or the risks to be addressed is to, when we think many times, when we think about open data, we think about the web as a whole. So dealing with entropy and fuzzy data can be a problem. And safety within member states, obviously, another problem that has to be addressed when we think about open data. Financial sustainability, that's a problem of a data provider agency like ours, to assure that we can be financially sustainable and that we can give updated data. And obviously, we have the main purpose of addressing user government needs in the first place. Let's move to the example that I brought to share with you in the real world. How does these ideas apply? And the project that I brought, as I said at the beginning, is being developed within the Smart Open Data project, and it's a shared pilot between Portugal and Spain because it addresses the manage of the Tagus River, that is a shared watershed and is quite relevant for both countries. And for instance, for Portugal, 1/4 of the population drinks water from this watershed. So it's really very relevant to address within the Water Framework Directive the water sustainability. And we will look into how all the teams, the data sets that Inspire addresses in terms of description and obligation to be well known and described, can improve the way we address this particular subject. So the Portugal-Spain pilot focused on building a web-based collaborative spatial data infrastructure prototype, and has the main goal of promoting sustainable drinking water management along with agroforestry management within the watershed. It will be built as a collaborative, powerful tool, obviously intending to and putting already some of the public participation, but that part I didn't brought it to you because only in 15 minutes it's difficult to speak about everything, but I brought you 2 or 3 other ideas related to the project, the pilot implementation. To manage land use, name forestry and agriculture is crucial for drinking water because is the most difficult use to address is the diffusion pollution that leads to forestry, to forest fires, and to agriculture practices. And we are thinking here of drinking water. Well, here, this is the water, the water dam, and there's the pumping station where the drinking water is captured. And by putting the data sets together, okay, within this pilot, what we did, because, well, we have the advantage of being also a public data provider and that know quite well the Inspire implementation process, okay? So these are the data sets that you can easily recognize, almost all, within the Inspire. The Inspire directive. This is the shared watershed that I talked to, and we are talking only about this part from the Portugal side that we are addressing in a deeper detail, okay? That's another problem, because when we are looking to data providing, we will not be able to afford providing data with the same detail for the whole data watershed. We have to know exactly what are our priorities. And this helps us understanding the priorities in terms, for instance, for the rivers and the hydrological teams, and for the pumping stations within the Annex 3, that is environmental water quality information that has to be addressed in the near future. This is, in the first stage, the core inland cover approach. Okay, core inland cover serves to make the bridges within the European Commission, and what you see there is a consistent way, because, as I said this morning, all the thematic maps that we are providing, as well as all the topographic and other data sets, are consistently updated so that evolution can have internal errors, but not other kind of errors and topological maps. I think that Portugal is a quite good country in terms of data, geographical data production. We have a large tradition in cartographic production. And this is synthesized. I'm running out of time, so I'll pass this a little quickly just to show you. This is the transformation between the years in terms of land use, and to see how these relate with water. Okay, this is one of the areas of the Inspire, and what you can see here, for instance, is that within the forest fires process, that is a problem for Portugal that has to be obviously addressed, because in here is one of the most relevant problem that we can take from data analysis at this stage by integrating data and because we have interoperability among the data sets and we know well the quality of the data, and Inspire was a very good approach to do so. We can say that the forest areas evoluted in order to open, wood shrub areas, and that obviously has to deal with forest fires, not only to the human activities itself. It has to be with burn areas, and because we establish a straight connection with other agencies, the National Environmental Agency in Portugal, we linked the pilot with the data on the SDI from the Public Environmental Agency that are also according to Inspire, in order to select some of the water monitoring parameters that we wanted to have more accurate and more updated, in order to analyze the land use evolution with the water quality evolution. Once again, in order to, together, we now are able to say what are the parameters that they should invest, and if they are running out of money, some of the parameters are quite essential so that we can monitor drinking water and accomplishing the the Water Framework Directive and being effective in terms of data collection. Okay, so data interoperability and open data here really serve the purpose of much better good governance only by linking those data sets and now moving forward into the Annex 3 to add some other data that are obviously useful within this simple approach. So the next steps were to determine the areas that potentially can contribute to the degradation of water quality. I only spoke about one. There are some obviously other that are quite relevant, mainly the evolution of the artificialized territory, but this one is the most significant in terms of this drinking water pumping. Modeling runoff, obviously, and evaluate flood risk, another one quite relevant. And I will conclude in a few seconds. Well, for the results will be obviously be able to be compared in terms of the evolution of the chemical elements concentration, and so to identify change in land cover and lead those change directly to the impacts. And if this is in open data SDI, you can obviously and we are involving the municipalities as well, because we have attributions in terms of land use planning, in terms to make a combined approach of what they can do in terms of their territory, leaning to an approach similar to the Kyoto Protocol approach in terms of what is the charge that each municipality can put into the drinking water system so that we can protect the water. All the work, of course, in this pilot is that I show you is about linking the open data within the INSPIRE context to address the problems within the real world, and then come back to the data sets and to be much more cost effective in terms of the time spending and the money that we spend to update the most relevant ones. So open data, some of the conclusions that the key success factors on open data. Okay. So this is the main conclusion. Of course. Okay. So the data can be better explored and combined. The metadata related to evaluate user governance needs is, for us, obvious. The user comments on data are quite relevant for us. Here, I put it mainly users, government users, and to build databases. That's what we are doing now, to build within our interfaces, SDIs, to put into database the user comments on data and using search engines in order to improve the way we manage the information that we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Maria.
Thank you.
I'm afraid that we don't have time for questions. Maybe you could have time at the end.
Okay.
Sorry. So it's
Are you first?
Yes, it is, sir.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't see that. Thanks. No, it's different. Sorry. My name is Javier Lopez. I'm from the University of Zaragoza. Thanks for being here. I'm going to present an ongoing project that we are having in the context of the Planet Data project. The goal is to present our project, the Linked Map project, explain the technologies that are involved and its current status. And it's a pity because many of the items that I'm going to show you is planned to be online at the end of this month. So it's difficult to show you something which is now workable. Well, the context of this project is Planet Data. Planet Data is an FP7 project, a network of excellence that ends this year. And his goal is to investigate, to analyze the state of art of large-scale public data management, because, you know, we are now in the era of the big data, linked data, and this is a hot issue here in Europe. In this case, they are focused in topics such as provenance, quality, trust, access rights. You can visit his URL at planetdata.eu. The Linked Map project is one of the projects of the Planet Data Call 2. These are several projects that are ongoing in this year. And in this case, our project has a strong focus in geographic information, in particular, voluntary geographic information and linked data. The partners of this project are University of Zaragoza, the EI Research Lab, and the spin-off of the university whose name is Geospatium Lab. The background of this project is the INSPIRE and the spatial data infrastructures. Well, we are here because we believe that linked data plus geographic information has a big potential. But the reality is that many people are saying that they are interested in linked data, but they are not investing money in that. It's just toy projects and so on. But we have interesting stories such as Ordnance Survey that show that it could be a good project in order to obtain good credits for the investment. Probably the reason behind this lack of adoption of linked data is the interoperability with, we can say, legacy geographic information systems. For example, how a web map service or a web feature service can work with linked data. Recently, I was being at the conference of Agile in Castellón 2 weeks ago, where, for example, an approach was presented for relating web feature services with linked data, and it was a workable example. But from the point of view of many people is that there is a little fear of change, because how to adapt the existing infrastructures to this new world. Well, we think that the vision of our project is to show how a complex issue in geographic information can be solved or can be assessed with the help of linked data. Our goal is this one. First, we are going to try to integrate two data sets. One is a national data set, in this case the cartographic database of Spain, with OpenStreetMap. And then try to make an assessment of the quality of the integration. I mean, we are going to try to see if it is easy or hard to find matches between two data sets. And this in the context of INSPIRE and INSPIRE services. The technological key idea of this approach is to transform in a standard web map services into a linked data server. This is made by keeping all the capabilities of the operation that they have, get capabilities, get math, and get feature info, but we enhance him, adding the ability to dereference URIs and also to add possibility to make to post, to put, to delete the resources as in a real-wide linked data platform. The idea is that a typical webmap server client see this server as a typical server. We don't break the rules. And a typical web semantic client only sees the linked data node, And if we create, for example, an open layers client with a little enhancement, he can work in both worlds easily. We call this kind of approach the linked map service. Our plan was first to transform the national map into linked data, then transform, in this case, open nested map into linked data too, because the existing transformation is altered. Link both datasets with a tool such as Silk, which is very typical in this world of the semantic web. Then develop a platform that uses this service that I have described, and then using this platform to assess the quality of the links between both datasets, in this case using the participation of the people, using volunteer people to doing that. The research lines that are involved here are first, the problem of geographic data provisioning. I mean, for example, how to convert a large geographic dataset into linked data, and also to link with other sources, in this case, VGI. The other point is, okay, we have the data sets that linked data, but we want to publish them in both ways. One as a typical map with web map services, another as a linked data, but in the same node, in the same platform. This is the linked map service. The other research line is, okay, we have this, we can use something useful. For us, something useful is use this in order to make a test, for example, in the crowdsourcing works. We are going to use the linked part of the platform in order to build a tool that can be used by people in order to assess the quality of a link between two datasets, but also looking at on a map. And finally, measure this use of the platform. The idea is not to see how good is the link. No, our goal is to see how good is the people doing crowdsourcing, because we are going to add data which is bad, and we are going to trick the people into discovering if they are behaving well and discovering the problems that are artificial and not caused by the link. For example, we want to discover if the people really is able to discover a bad link, or or check if they only, when say that other people say that this link is okay, they also say that as followers the link is okay. More or less, the architecture of the system is as is. The linked map service is just a proxy between a remote web map services, any web map services, and a data repository. The data repository is an RDF store with a SparkQL endpoint that can allow updates. The linked map service is just act as a proxy for images and for OGC queries to the remote web map services, and when the client asks for semantic web content, using the same request that you use for web map services, then diverts to the data repository, get the relevant data, and returns it to the client. This is more or less the architecture of the system. As you can see, we have several get endpoints that are the typicals for the getting the data, but also we support the posting for adding data in the semantic web world, also the delete. We can also patch current data, and at the end you can see that we have the typical interfaces for the OGC world, that means the KVP and the XML. More or less, this is the overall idea. We first perform the conversions, the mapping, and then all this information is going to be published through the platform. In this platform is going to the users to add his edits and his opinions. And in the same center, in the map, is behind our linked map services providing access to the whole data. And now this is the ongoing development, and we have now the client in production. We expect that it's online at the end of this month, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, but we think that it could be a very interesting tool in order to assess how people work with this kind of technologies. As you can see, our current status, we are now just nearly in the end. We have finishing the link in the both datasets. The software is near ready, about 80% of the platform is ready, and the experiments for quality are planned for this summer. If you want to visit to this project, the website is here, and soon it will be replaced by the tool that you have seen. And thanks for your patience, and I expect that you can comment with me whatever you want to know about the experiments in the coffee. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Francisco. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Andrea. Hello, I'm Benoit. I'm coordinating a project dealing also with linked data, and I just wanted to ask you whether the ontology you are defining for the maps is available and documented. And second question about the crowd testing. How do you expect to motivate people to do that? And what are the people? Students, I suppose, of your university? Of course, they are always motivated.
Well,
Francisco, please use the mic.
Well, for the first one, the ontology is also in development, but for example, in the documentation that is available in the deliverables of the project is well described ideas and the main ideas, but we are obligated to do it better, and we should publish this information, all the model and all the data, by the end of September. In regarding to the second question, and obviously, students are the first candidates, but also people in National Geographic Institute, because they are also interested in working in this kind of technologies, and also there is a strong word of people of volunteer geographic information that could be keen to participate in this kind of issue. I hope so.
Thanks a lot for a very interesting presentation. I would have two questions. First one is related to the plans of your work. Aren't you also planning, or aren't you aware about some web clients where actually you would be able to display through one web user interface SDI, even WMS or any WXS services, together with some link geodata, even without the need to do the transformation from SDI to link data? Because I think at this moment it's quite how to say, big expectations that all potential users in the future, first of all, will have to do the transformation to LD and then to display them in one user interface. Mm-hmm. So the question is, if you are not even planning in the project, if you are aware about some interface where the users can mesh up those two types of data sets, that would be very useful for us, because within that project, Smart Open Data, we are also planning to do something similar. And second question was related actually to the type of WFS content. I think this approach is more close to this linked data approach, whether there are no some plans to do some sort of support for transformation of this stuff to LD stuff. Thanks a lot.
Well, about the second question, one point about the WFS, there are people that are working on that, not in my research group, there are others, but I want to say to something. In practice, the only successful OGC web services is the web map services. I worked into crawling web services 2 or 3 years ago, and I discovered that nearly 80% of the worldwide number of services were web map services. So if citizens are using that, I think that the best way to use to provide something useful is through the map. And also we always forget that there is a method inside of the web map services, who is the get feature info, who is neglected in the use. I mean, we can use that in order to provide a rich amount of data. And the other side is about, the first one was the question about?
Actually, to mesh up the WMS content at the same time with some content from some geospark or spark point in one.
In a way, we are doing that, because when we are doing as a proxy, I mean, in practice, we are performing Sparkle queries against, in this case, an Strabon. So the idea is to not to fool web clients. I mean, the problem is that if you have, for example, something with open layers, for example, you should provide something easy for the end developer. And if possible, hide all the semantic technology behind the server. Because a colleague of mine says that saying the term semantics is like to potion some kind of relationship with clients and so on. They don't understand this kind of technologies yet.
Okay, we have time for a very quick last question because it was already booked by Genuchten.
Okay. Just a quick question. I wonder if you can explore or expand a little bit what kind of use cases you can address with the linked map services. You mentioned complex use cases that you can't address with the WMS.
The easier case, for example, could be access the metadata, the legal metadata about a tile of a request of a get map. You perform a get map, and you want to know, for example, who is the owner of the tile, or who are the access right, or whatever. Why not you can also again request again the same request to the service, and then asking, okay, give me a description of this tile in RDF, and in this description you can put everything. From data describing the image, from data describing what is represented inside the image, and also data about the license, rights, access, and so on. This is the simplest case that I can imagine. Mix both worlds.
Thanks a lot again, Francisco.
Thank you.
Yes? Yes. Hi. So it's good to be here in Aalborg. It's my first Inspire conference, and so it's very good to hear all the talks. I especially like all the attention for open data and for linked data. It's quite good to see all that attention. So I look, what shall I tell? Because I go, so I should tell something. And I want to share with you some work we do for Environment Canada, which is kind of they've got similar efforts in setting up an SDI in Canada for environment. And the open data approach is quite prominent also there. But before we get there, I have some words on open data. A lot of it has been said before, but I want to give a short overview. So, Inspire meets open data, also known as NeoGeography. This is a typical sketch of a NeoGeography seminar. And this is how NeoGeography looks at geography. So, for me as a geographer, I think this is a very poor image. For those guys, this is, wow, what is that? That's amazing. And the term NeoGeography is actually not new. It was in this book already 10 years ago. Some of you might know it. But does this all relate to Inspire?
May I ask you if you can use the phone? Like, maybe you are more comfortable.
Okay. But yes, I'm better heard maybe. So, no, this does not relate to Inspire because it's not in any regulation to do open data. But yes, Inspire kind of recommends to do open data. So this is relevant. It's also relevant because open data is a big audience. Yeah? So from the geospatial world, we're kind of a small world. We have a lot of data. We need an audience for that data. Open data has that audience. There's a lot of energy and innovation in open data. And joint efforts triple the results. So those are real. But is open data all that different? Yes. The APIs are easy. The user interfaces are clean, nice. It's optimized for performance. It's based on community best practices. But is it really that different? No. They also have data, metadata, projections, tiles, vectors, vocabularies. We know that stuff. We do that. And we all use Goodall. Most of you use Goodall, I guess so. Lions? Yeah, see? They also use Goodall. So should it be difficult to connect to that community? Or maybe we are that community, because we also do open data. So it's not that difficult, but it needs some attention. There's some reparation work to do, because the communities tend to go in each direction separately. So we have to reach out to them and connect again. There's perceived complexity. Those OGC standards, people in the open data movement look at it, what are they doing? The Inspire data models? Wow, what is all that stuff? So there's perceived complexity. The community is not really involved. There's mutual familiarity. Yeah? We don't talk to them quite often. This is an example of such a case. This is a picture from the Dutch georegistry, where we put Inspire data. We put it in some Atom feed. Why are there 7 download files and each named the same one, same title? Well, actually, they have a year, so it's separate several years, but it's not in the title, so nobody knows. Then you open the file, you get this crap files. What is that? It's a file geodatabase. We know, but they don't. And you need some software which they say OGR should be able to open it, but not this one. This is a special one. So that's why we need an introduction to NeoGeography. So what is that? OpenStreetMap. It's quite an important project. A lot of the open data people are in this project. They're discussing in mailing lists all issues they have while creating the best map in the world. It looks nice. It has all these different themes. Bike map, transport map, humanitarian map. So it's a huge data set. There's these guys, commercial guys, who kind of make money on maps, money that we could also make, because we are the geo guys. But representation is important. It should look nice. So their website looks nice. These formats are important. GeoJSON, TopoJSON. People use that in websites, have fast performant websites. You need these kind of formats, support for that. They store their data in GitHub. So the data is versioned nicely over time. It's even displayed very nicely. And we could use that. This is their projection. We should support that. It should be one of the inspired projections that each service should support. So then you can combine, provide the data in a format that people want it. Should actually be 3857, well, minor detail. Tiles. Tiles is the service. We have tiles. However, they are in WMTS. They want TMS. There's a slight difference. Are the same tiles, but the format is a little different. Support it. Vector tiles. That's kind of an innovation coming from this community. They said, okay, can have bitmap tiles, but bitmap is just a bitmap. You don't know anything about the thing. You need vector. And the concept of clipping up the world in tiles is nice, because you just grab the tiles that you need for your current image. So what are the players in this field? The data providers. Those are the most important. Who of you is a data provider? Well, quite a lot. That's good. So it's your task to facilitate them. Be aware of that. Portal providers could provide functionality to help them. Third parties do provide services. Communities assist, and spec writers can help. This is, well, it's not optimal, but it's a little bit better. This is another example from the Dutch Inspire datasets. At least they put good Atom references here. You can see the differences. There's different formats. There's shapefiles, there's GML. There's different projections, so people can make a choice. Hey, I want that shapefile in that projection, so that it's better. And then it's a shapefile. But the people in the open data world will know what a shapefile is. CSV might have been better, but a shapefile it can do. So you can make a nice map in quantum GIS, for example. This is how it should be. This is how we should publish our data. People can go to a store and just grab that box for free, because it's there. And look at the formats. It's available in GML, GeoPackage, JSON, CSV. Any format is there. But it's not difficult. Godel will handle all of that for you. This is an example of a portal. This is actually GeoNetwork, but it's used in the Dutch National Discovery Service endpoint. Has a data extractor. So if GeoNetwork notices a WFS endpoint, and you hit download data, you get this. You select an area, you select the projection, you select the format, and you get the file in the format that you want it. This is another one, it's called GeoOrchestra. This is also an open source SDI tool, and this one is even better. It uses Godel in the back end to have support for a lot of projections and a lot of formats. And we'll send the result to an email address, because it could be a large file. Well, this is an example of other parties, third parties. So if we as data providers are not interested in putting nice metadata and nice conversion tools, other people will pick this up. This is an example of City SDK, which is in Amsterdam, a group that just grabs all the Inspire data, converts it to simple REST services, and apply the REST service. So these are the Dutch buildings, straight from Inspire, published as REST. This is another commercial supplier. They got the Dutch the height data for 50 centimeter, and created a nice shaded relief for that, and you can add it to your map. This is another one, also a commercial one. This is an important one. These guys, this is a beta of a data portal thing. 5 minutes, okay. This is an important one. And then there's communities. This in the Netherlands, we have this community supporting people who want to extract data from Inspire. They have nice tools. For example, Staddle, streaming EDL. Maybe you heard about it, which can grab XML from Inspire and create any format. This is why is this here? Well, it's a community. So back to where we started. Linked data. This is a session that we're in. A 5-star open data. What is it? If you provide the data in formats like shapefile, CSV, JSON, GeoJSON, you already have those 3 stars. So you're halfway there. It's not that difficult. Just do it. The other one, Robin has spoke about that. My colleague Linda is working on that. And the 5th one is what I'm going to look in now. Linked open data and Inspire, we share a goal. We want to add universal semantics to data. But the paradigm is different. In Inspire, we harmonize to a model. In linked data, we keep the data where it is, but add kind of tags on the data to give it semantics. So this is Robin's story. That could work in future. But it doesn't work for as-is data. And most of what we have in Inspire now is as-is data. This morning it was corrected to say, hey, we have GML, we're open. Well, this is only in the guidelines, so it seems it's not even clear in the future that we will have GML. So I don't know about this. It could happen. We have an alternative approach based on open data best practices, and this is mostly developed for Environment Canada. JSON LD. Who knows JSON LD? Yeah, that's good. So JSON LD is a format which really fits with the Geo community. It's just a flat table, actually a shapefile, and you put some context on top. That's it, JSON LD. No difficult RDF, just this. We know this one. Feature, place. Check this guy out. Sergilis is doing great work here. For Canada, we created this concept of a web accessible folder. Files and WFSs are duplicated as CSV into this folder. Get 2 minutes, that's good. And then WEF offers, I'll just show it. This is how such a web accessible folder looks like. It has, for a certain data set, all the formats there. And Google can spider this. This has RDFA, so RDF enabled things can look at this. This is machine to machine and human. We have the thing, data package.json is a thing from Open Knowledge Foundation. We added kind of the LD aspect there. So we added kind of semantics to the JSON data package thing. And that one has kind of the links to the files which are in the folder. It has links to broader and narrower folders, so you have the full tree structure linked. With semantics attributes, that's another thing. How can you determine on a certain shapefile what each column means? And that's where this ISO 19110 comes in, the feature catalog thing. In GeoNetwork, there's an editor to give meaning to columns. If you use that information, you're able to create GeoJSON LD. And that if you link to common vocabularies here from the Inspire registry, you could even be a first step in the upcoming harmonization. 5 stars obtained. Thanks.
Are there any questions? No questions? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So look on to the next speaker.
Yes, Juno. It's all in Juno. It's not interesting.
Very much. You've had this one? Yeah, actually I'll take this one. Thank you very much. I feel a little bit of a fraud. I'm not quite sure I'm in the right session. Linked data is a very small component in my presentation. So if you want to go and take an early coffee, I won't be too upset. But do please hang on, because I hope you find this interesting. This is weird. Okay. Some slides have disappeared. Okay. Right. Beyond the Map is the title of the presentation, but what I want to actually talk about, hang on, I'm going to find you the right set of slides. I'm not going to look at these. Excuse me. That's better. Right. Now, Beyond the Map is the title, but actually what I'm going to talk about is all about the map, and you'll see that towards the end. It's not particularly about linked data, as I said, but linked data is part of the solution to the problem that I think has been the elephant in the room for most of this conference, which is actually a problem of accessibility, problem of what we do in our community not being particularly accessible to the rest of the world. And I want to carry out a very small and very short experiment, quite a dangerous one for this time of day, to demonstrate that. I want you all to close your eyes. Everybody close their eyes. You got your eyes closed? That is what Inspire looks like to the rest of the internet. We have a problem. And we have a problem because accessibility always wins online. And accessibility wins in most areas. This was the first CD I ever bought. Show of hands, probably lots of you bought this CD. It was recorded, the sound of Mark Knopfler and the rest was recorded at 1,400 kilobits per second. That's how often the sound was sampled. If you want to listen to a track from Brothers in Arms today on your mobile device, streamed from Spotify, you're listening to sound at 96 kilobits per second. It sounds like rubbish compared to the original CD, but that's much more accessible. I can listen to that in the train, I can listen to that anywhere. Therefore, that's what I'm listening to. I'm not buying CDs anymore. Accessibility wins. So how do we make geospatial data more accessible? Well, you could say, well, we've gone some way with things like Google Earth. Google Earth, if you like, was a new channel. It was a new way of making geospatial content available. There wasn't a huge amount of new technology involved. There certainly wasn't any new data. The data already existed. We made that data more accessible by creating a new channel, a new way that people could get access to the information. And that's what we need to do. We need to create more channels than we currently have. Today, we basically have one channel that's designed for professional users who will come and look at Inspire data via an OGC interface. And that's a very, very small community of users. So we need to establish other channels. One of those, and perhaps the one that will be the all-encompassing one, ultimately may be linked data, where finally geospatial becomes just part of the web. But there are other alternatives that we could implement now, other channels that meet different communities that make this information more accessible. We saw the great example earlier this year here in Denmark of using Minecraft, a game, as a channel to make this information accessible to different communities. What I want to look at in the rest of this talk is looking at web platforms as a channel of making maps available to broader communities than the just existing ones. So if you only come away from this talk with one message, it's that we need more channels, other ways of making this information accessible. Now, making information accessible leads you to things like this. This is looking at my house in Google Earth. Everybody that used Google Earth, the first time you ever used it, this is what you did. You went and you looked at your house. Everybody does the same thing. The top of the screen here, this is Teddington in South West London, you'd find Thames Television Studios. This is where the Benny Hill show was filmed in the 1970s. You can still have very happy memories of women in bikinis running down the street. It's going to close at the end of this year. It's going to be knocked down and turned into flats, into apartments. That's because television and how it's produced and how it's distributed has changed radically. We now have on our phones cameras that are at least equal to what the TV cameras were that we used to film the Benny Hill show. But the biggest change in TV has been in terms of distribution rather than creation. In the early days of online video, you had to jump through all of these hoops to make your video available to people on the web. You had to come up with particular transcoding and coding strategies. There were all sorts of complex business models you had to deal with. Bandwidth was expensive. How would you find video that you published? Anybody remember Real Video and Real Player? What a nightmare that was. But now, that looks kind of similar to this, doesn't it? The kind of infrastructure that we have to live with if we want to distribute geospatial data online. Now, of course, in terms of video, this is what we do now. We make use of web platforms. We use things like YouTube and Netflix, Twitch. If you've got teenage boys, they will all be on Twitch watching other people play computer games, and Ustream and iPlayer and so on and so forth. So the big change there is that these platforms have made the distribution of information, TV, online easy. How can we do the same for maps? How can we make maps findable online? And by maps here, I'm talking about when the map actually is the thing that we're looking for. There's this confusion we have in our industry where we confuse the entity, a feature, and its representation. And we always get mixed up and we end up going down rat holes. Here I'm talking about when we're actually looking for something called a map. And that is an important use case. because Google Maps is great and it's very comprehensive, well, it's very accurate, it's very useful, but it isn't as comprehensive as it could be, and actually it's not as comprehensive as all the information that's out there, and you wouldn't want to put all that information on Google Maps. Sometimes you want to get a different map, a map that might give you the medieval administrative districts of Denmark. That's never going to appear on Google Maps. It's not going to be something that's going to be useful to the mass market that makes use of Google Maps. But it nevertheless is interesting to people, and they need to be able to find that online in an easy way. If I type Somerset flood map into Google, as I did earlier this year because we had a lot of flooding in the UK, actually very few of the results were a real map that I could view and get access to. Or if I was looking for Hertfordshire polling stations, we had the European elections a month or so ago, looking for a local election site. Well, this wasn't so bad. I'd get perhaps a web page that showed me about the locations of where particular polling stations were, but almost certainly they would be PDF documents that were scanned in, and the little dot there shows you where the polling station was. Not a great user experience. Part of this is trying to understand, when someone asks for a map, is a map really the right result? And we've done a lot of work behind the scenes, doing eye tracking, and looking when people look at the results, and how many times do they actually look at the map as it's presented there, or do they look at a table of information about, in this case, New York? If you type New York, do you want the map? Do you want other information? We're trying to understand the intent that someone means when they type map into Google. Another way of looking at that is to look at whether the information is best portrayed as a picture or as text. So there's a difference between Yosemite and Yosemite Trails. When you type Yosemite Trails, more often than not, people are looking for a map, where Yosemite could mean all sorts of different things. It could be an operating system at the moment. Or, if you're looking for other features, other topics, being able to look across how people are searching and what information is important to them becomes valuable. So what we want to do is develop web platforms that allow you to publish maps, and for people then to find the maps themselves. And we've created this thing called Maps Engine. I like to think of it as YouTube for maps, in that it allows you to think about managing the maps you want to publish, not creating servers and managing those servers. You upload the maps, you can use them and view them on top of the existing Google infrastructure. But it allows us, hopefully, to provide a mechanism for all of those maps that exist out there that will never be turned into GIS structured data, may never ever become linked data, but are nevertheless maps that people would find useful and valuable. And we need to recognize them as being maps, as something that's useful to find. So how might we do this? Well, the interface is this is Google Maps Gallery, and it works a little bit like YouTube. You can search for things, but you can also browse and scroll through maps that exist. If you're a publisher of maps, it's very easy to upload the mapping data from your existing GIS, or even if it's a GeoTIFF, we'll geocode it for you, put it in the right place. You know then the tools to build those maps online, choose how they might be rendered, and then publish to the widest range of different platforms out there, not just Google platforms, any way of consuming content on the web. And that's really important. Something else that's not really been mentioned very much today is that in the very near future, the vast majority of people interacting with the web will do so via mobile devices. And we need to think about how we publish our information that is going to be accessible to someone that's going to be using a mobile device. And via the Maps Gallery, you get access to all those people that are building apps via Android, iOS, or the web itself. It allows you to reach the people that are looking for information when they need it. The scalability comes from the infrastructure that we provide. And this is similar to, ArcGIS Online, and there are other similar sort of web technologies that deliver this. But it's an important way of thinking, another channel to make your information accessible to people. So here, if you're looking for information about shelters for fire in California, this is the up-to-date information that's coming from the local emergency management office in California, so that it's authoritative. You can use other underlying data as your canvas. This is an 1860 map of Edinburgh overlaid in Google Earth, and it's a nice contrast between the land use plans of the 1870s and the current cityscape of the city of Edinburgh. It's your mapping data, you control it. So when you upload it in the same way you do on YouTube, you can choose how people will be able to access it. You can, if you want to, restrict access to different user communities. You can impose your own licensing restrictions if you want to. And ultimately, if you want to charge for mapping data, we obviously don't want you to, but if you do, those mechanisms will be put in place as well. The key thing here is it can be live dynamic content. This is one of the current partners who are using this technology to show the company registrations in real time as they happen in Spain. So as new companies are registered, a little dot appears on the map within about 25 minutes of the registration document going through the process. It's connected in to the registration system that the Spanish government operate. It's also a way of highlighting your brand as an organisation, just in the same way that you would do with your YouTube channel. This is IGN's map gallery page. It's branded, it links to the maps that they want you to, and they have a freemium model where this is where they put all of their open data, their free data, and if they want them to go buy more detailed mapping, there's a method that you can click through and go and do that. But it allows people in France to get that initial search for the map that they're looking for. Now, in the future, this isn't something that works now, but this is something that we are working on. We want to be able to try and identify the authoritative content, the authoritative knowledge that comes from government agencies, data providers, organizations like yourselves represented in this room, from the other content that might be out there as well. And that's something that is more directly linked to linked data, more directly linked to this knowledge graph of facts that we're trying to create. This is a work in progress. But ideally, if you look at it from the user's point of view, that's the sort of representation that they want. They want to know what's the authoritative source, the content that is facts. You know, Winston Churchill was born on this particular day, and then they want the other information that may be commentary, may be linked to that, separated. That's something that we can't do at the moment, but it is something that we need to be able to do to serve the needs of our users. Okay, I'm going to finish off. If you want to take part, if you have data sets, you have mapping data that you want to publish, anybody in this room can do it for free as an individual. As a mapping organisation, as a mapping agency, if you're part of government and you're doing work publishing data, all of this technology is available to you free of charge as a mechanism of publishing your content, making it accessible. So you can visit google.com/gallery or email me and I can connect you up, and we'd love to see more of your maps online and more of your maps accessible and discoverable by the 99.9999999999999, I'll carry on, percent of the world that don't know what Inspire is. Thank you very much.
Good. Are there any questions? We are all tired, really?
Coffee.
Okay.
A question: how would Google answer questions about data residency that some organization, with reason or without reason, or good reasons, have? This is a concern of some organization to have a clear view on data residency, and it also includes not only the real data, the actual data, but also the maps that are produced from this data.
So the question is, what if you have concerns about where the data is hosted, I guess, the content, which is the big cloud question. At the moment, we are still under the understanding belief of safe harbor that regards any content hosted in Europe or North America to be hosted under the same conditions. But I think the more fundamental question here is that you think about, okay, is this data that I really want to publish? Is this data I want to make available? And if you do, you shouldn't really be worried about where that data is going to reside, because once it's going to be on the internet, it's going to go everywhere anyway. So in many ways, I think it's a little bit of a false question. Absolutely, there are valid questions to have for more sensitive content, for information that you're not sharing. But here you are publishing and you're wanting to make this information as widely accessible as possible, and it is going to be a bit like mercury. It's going to flow in whichever direction it wants to flow, because that's the way the internet works.
Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Felix. I have a question. A lot of the application or the use cases you've shown are about visualizing data on a map. But if you look at applications or use cases within transport or in the IDS sector, it's all about routing. And so my question is how does Google look at this? I was triggered by the first remark you made. It's all about the map. I absolutely agree with that. But it also means that for the world I live in, where we have to work with routing, you need to have knowledge of topology and geometry. So visualization is not sufficient. What is Google working on that as well? I'm participating in the beta program of the map engine, and I'm not seeing those kind of things yet, but I'm just wondering what the ideas Google has or you would like to share with us about that.
That's a very good question. So it's about, how do we deal with the more structured, more traditional GIS data view of the world? Well, what I've been talking about here in the Maps engine, it is actually making that conscious decision and saying, no, this is just a map. It's a visual representation. It might be a scanned map of a 16th century chart. So it's not going to have the inbuilt knowledge and intelligence that a traditional GIS data set will have. We keep those now, I think, more in sort of separate buckets. So we've put a lot of effort into ITS, into understanding public transport systems and routing and navigation. Those are in a kind of a different place. They're accessible via other APIs. This is very much focused at getting a map published, and there may be no intelligence whatsoever associated with that map other than we know its geolocation.
Other questions? Thanks a lot again, Ed.
My pleasure. So you didn't have time for your Q&A.
Okay. If I can have a minute from you. Okay. People not interested can go, but if you're interested, just a couple of minutes. Okay. No, but as you like. Okay. No, just to wrap up, actually, and to try to do something more than just closing the session, because, again, we have a lot of examples of people working on the use of linked data in Inspire. In some cases, we have also realized that many people are trying to do the same thing in isolation. Now, people are more collaborative with respect to last year. This is actually what I think. But probably we can work together to have a better coordination, to share the efforts, the results, and so on. But again, it is up to you. We will be very happy. There is the action arena that is meant also to do this, to provide reusable components. And these are the reusable components that the Inspire community is looking for, maybe also for linked data. So this is the first point. But I also would like to have a kind of, yes. Sorry. So, just a moment. Where is it? No, the point is that I put here a couple of slides I made trying to summarize what happened. I made also a very nice tag cloud, but it seems that it's been erased somewhere.
The center of
Yes, you don't know.
hiding.
No. It should be here, but no, it's been deleted. Okay, sorry. No, so if I remember well, so I was trying to identify the main key phrases inside the presentations or the two sessions, just to understand basically what is being addressed by the work done on the user-linked data. For instance, it is just the metadata, only the data, both, but also the purposes. So if I remember well again, what I realized that the work concerns both the data and the metadata, but more people are working just on the metadata, meaning that probably it's considered as a more critical, or at least it may be a simpler issue, the transformation of metadata, inspired metadata into semantic web technologies and linked data. And this is just for the part about what is the part of Inspire that is that we are working on. The second part was about why. And it was interesting to see that basically most of the presentation was about making Inspire available on the web. There are also other purposes, but basically they are kind of linked to this, like bringing Inspire to a broader audience or linking the Inspire data with other sources and so on. So I had the impression that this is actually what, at least in the Inspire community, linked data is considered for. So to make available Inspire data on the web, accessible through web technologies. It was very interesting, the presentation made in the first session about how we can use RDFA, annotated web pages, in order to use search engines to search metadata, and having, in some cases, better results that you usually have in the geoportals, because it is possible to use the normal user expertise, not the expert, the one of the expert to search this data. So I think it is important because the work on linked data and the use of such a technology in Inspire, I mean, this is my personal opinion, but it shouldn't be just an academic exercise. We shouldn't be just giving access to Inspire data also with another technologies. We have to consider which is the purpose. In some cases, the purpose may also affect how we transform the data. And this is also related to some of the points made by presenters about, do we always need this complexity? I mean, in some cases, yes, but in other cases, we may need a lower complexity depending on the use. So, okay. This was the tag cloud. There was not so many words, but anyway. So, Robin, what do you think? We can propose this from the side of GRC and the arena action. I mean, we have an environment for collaborating, but at least we can try to keep informed ourselves about the activities that in European projects or inside member states working on these issues.
I don't think we're that many people to begin with, and that's useful in the sense that we can probably interact in small groups and be able to keep each other informed. So like I said, at least in the first instance, you can keep in touch with us, and we have leaflets here explaining more about Arena in general that I don't want to take home apart from anything else. No, but it really gives you a sense of the overall objectives of the programme, as well as the work that's extending out into this wider web and e-government activity about what we have planned. So I propose that in the first place. There's a generic email address that we both pick up, so we can maybe collect things. Plus, we'd be interested to know, why don't you get in touch with us and let us know what you think the best platform for collaboration would be. We have the Inspire Forum, because we're part of ISA, we have Join Up, but where do you work? Let's not create another platform, let's make something that works for where you're normally working. If we need something new, that would be something else, but it's really about reaching out to your communities. We're not trying to create something new, we're just trying to create a context where we can work together.
Yeah. So just one last comment. You are probably aware that a working group, a joint working group between WTC and OGC will be chartered, hopefully. And so probably we should consider to gather what we think are the requirements from the Inspire side and contribute them in a consistent way. I mean, we are a big community. The issues are not always the same because this depends on our institutional and technical setting, but we may have a number of issues that we'll like to bring to the working group, and of course I think that will be also interesting to participate in this working group and contribute to it. So I think that if you are able to build a kind of community in Inspire, or the people working on linked data, or if you want more in general, people who would like to bring Inspire on the web, this would be very helpful in terms of understanding which are our requirements and how we can move forward to solve them.
And just to go back to my presentation, our immediate interest is those people who are already working on this or are working in current projects that are relevant to this, because this is something we'd like to take forward in Arena, probably starting early next year, but really starting hands-on activities, so plans to be made towards the end of this year. Where our timeline essentially will run out, at least with the current funding, probably late next year. So we're not waiting for anything in doing this, but we certainly would like other people to be involved because we want it to be a community-led resource. Okay. So if you like a leaflet, I'll stand at the back door and once everybody's to leave.
So thanks a lot. Staying here. Bye-bye.